Lecturer Eric and newsreader Anna live with their teenage daughter Freya in 1970s Copenhagen. Anna finds their conventional life a bit vanilla, and so when Eric inherits a large house from his father, she suggests they use it as an opportunity to live differently, communally. Pretty soon, this nuclear family opens its doors to a characterful constellation of men, women, and children, making decisions collectively and skinny dipping impetuously. But when Eric cheats on Anna with a younger woman, one of his students no less, their relationship crisis becomes not just an agenda item at the weekly house meeting, but an existential threat for their utopian project. You're locked onto MoobTube, a little podcast for the Waitrose of streaming services. Owen, did the Commune make you feel at home?
No, actually, I think this film is should serve as a warning to anyone who wants to dabble or experiment in the world of collective living. This film is on the surface is an exploration of what it means to surrender your kind of your sense of your boundaries, to sacrifice, as it were, your the possessiveness that comes with like the nuclear home, by opening up the kind of opening yourself up to a collective, sharing your space and your life and each other, and literally your property, because the character Eric, he inherits his house at least in theory. He gifts this house to the people who join that commune, so he's not acting like a landlord or a boss. He again, in theory, he's not acting like a landlord or a boss, but he is surrendering the property and the wealth to these people and to the collective. And he says that pretty directly, because he's obsessed with, he's got very different values from his wife initially, because she seems excited about the possibility of the house. She raises the spectre or the possibility of the commune, whereas he is attracted to the idea of selling the house for profit, because he learns that this is 1978 in Denmark. He learns it's worth a million kroner or whatever. It's a extremely valuable house. He's happy with that. He's kind of a stick in the mud in a way, whereas his wife is a bit more outgoing. But the interesting thing is quite early on, she suggests this. They seem to have this nice dynamic in this homely, comfortable thing. She's the one that raises the possibility of the commune and having collective living, initially to solve a resource problem, which is that they can't afford to run the house. She sort of says, oh, well, the bills are really expensive. We need to bring other people in, rather than setting up some arrangement, like a rental arrangement. She just, maybe we should do a commune. It all happens very quickly, and poor Eric is kind of dragged along, as it were, and he's like, yeah, sure, because he loves her very, very dearly and very clearly, and goes along with it. He doesn't seem particularly convinced, right?
Yeah, and there's every time they audition someone, they interview someone, that's the thing that happens in my flat, that we sort of interview people. I find this, it's kind of, it can be very good for finding really great people, but the interview process with living situations is always like, it's awkward and a lot of,
it's quite forced.
Yeah, a lot of those tensions rise. There's this immigrant figure, I think he's Lebanese, called Alon, who can't really afford the rent and is sort of, but they kind of include him because they want to be progressive, and that.
Well, no, initially they don't. Initially they're really opposed to him, right? Eric doesn't like him because he feels that Alon is surly and confrontational, whereas it might just be a miscommunication. He doesn't really say anything, Alon. He's perfectly nice. One of the other characters, who appears to be the most kind of obviously hippie character, has this false issue where she pretends she can't understand his Danish.
Yeah, Mona.
And she's the person, Mona is moaning Mona, right? And she's a person on the surface, too easy, but she's on the surface, she's a character who appears most the part of this kind of progressive experiment, but in reality she's got these quite obvious prejudices and issues that she kind of projects onto Alon in terms of being like, I guess we call it like a microaggression now. She's like saying, "Oh, I don't understand. What's he saying? Yeah,
because there's so many microaggressions in this film.
It's weird because, like, in terms of context, like this is Thomas Vinterberg, who has had a really bizarre career in the sense of he's made he was an original founder of Dogma 95.
He made the first Dogma 95 approved film, and he founded Festen, and he founded it with the movement with Lars von Trier. For listeners who aren't aware, Dogma 95 is a cinematic movement in Denmark in 1995, where there were rules related to the realness of the production. So you weren't allowed to have superficial acts like murder or simulated sex. Yeah, there were no props that weren't found in the location. You weren't allowed to sort of do artificial lighting that wasn't part of the room you were in.
Cameras had to be handheld.
Yeah. So they all had this kind of very frantic home movie style feel.
And some critics said this is kind of a kind of quite meaningless, kind of historically insignificant film movement. And both directors, like particularly Vinterberg and Lars von Trier, have both gone on to make films that are very decidedly not Dogma films. Very stylized.
The difference with Festen is an absolute masterpiece, and I think it owes some of its brilliance to those rules and those constraints.
100%. You were really pushing me to watch it before this. I've watched about half of it so far.
Wow.
But it's really frantic, and it's really intense and confrontational and personal. He uses these it has the energy of like a 90s music video.
Yeah.
These kind of fisheye lenses, and the camera is often like, there's sections where the family are driving to this big country house, and they're literally hanging the camera out of the car window, and it's just, dangerous as fuck, right? And it's just kind of like screeching tires, dust everywhere. It's all really rapid paced. But yeah, that's in theory what, that's Thomas Vinterberg's, that's his roots.
A sort of mirror work to Festen is the film he made in 2012, The Hunt, which is about a school teacher in a small town who
Mads
Mikkelsen, stars as the school teacher who gets accused of a child tells an innocent lie and gets him into a huge amount of trouble. And the community kind of is ripped apart by this. And I suppose so through the threads of those three films, which are the Commune and The Hunt and Festen, you see this preoccupation with how families and communities are kind of torn apart by people's personal traumatic events. And this is what I find most meaningful about the Commune. I think the Commune has some weaknesses on a script level. I don't think the characterization is
there's a lot of quite two-dimensional characterization, because the main crux of this film is why it's in theory a film about the Commune. It's really a film about a marriage.
But that's the central paradox to the whole film, is that they are trying to integrate their nuclear family into something wider, but they can't because they'll still encounter their nuclear family problems. It'll just be projected onto this public space.
It's kind of the marriage shown through the prism of these sort of 8 or so other characters.
But it's the same with the film. The film can't avoid doing that either. The film tries to kind of tell the story of... It barely tries to tell the story of these 12 people, but it really just tells the story of the marriage.
They're very quickly painted, these characters. Like I said, there's this immigrant character, there's the kind of ostensibly kind of hippie woman, there's the kind of swaggering handsome mustached kind of leftist guy, Olle, who's like a bit of a thug but a bit of Lothario and kind of charming and incredibly irritating. There's the kind of like there's another family there who seem a bit more used to this situation, with a kind of like a chubby beardy guy who's constantly trying to hug and kiss the women in a mildly creepy way. He's blue. Is it blue pilling?
I don't know what you're talking about, luckily.
Yeah, you do. Get online. It's the idea of blue flagging. So it was like recently on social media or on dating apps anyway, that a lot of men were kind of professing quite outwardly to hold like feminist and progressive politics in order to kind of get women.
Woke fishing.
Woke fishing. That's
what I call it. But yeah,
woke fishing. So it is the same thing. It's woke fishing. I think the guys.
Aren't we all woke fishing deep down?
This podcast is woke fishing. It could be accused of that at times. No, it really isn't. So there's that character, and they're quite quickly painted in brushstrokes. Really, it's Eric, Eric's daughter and Eric's wife, who's the newscaster, who are painted in much deeper hues, and we spend a lot more time with them and learn a lot more about their personality and their needs, and which is kind of in a way like if you live, it kind of echoes what it would be like to live in a commune or any collective situation, because you still see it through you may live with 10 or 20 or 30 people, but you're seeing it through your perception of these other people. So it's kind of recreating in miniature being in that situation. I mean, I would say that like it's a weird film, because it's quite it reads as quite a normie film quite often. Like it's just pleasant enough to watch and nicely enough shot. It's kind of at times reminded me of like a Goodbye Lenin energy to it, right? This kind of fun, happy clappy kind of montage scenes where we're all hanging out and getting to know each other and having like dinner, and that's all the prelude is the kind of peak before the fall of Eric and I've forgotten his wife's name. What's her name? Anna, easiest name to remember. Eric and Anna's kind of friction and their collapse, which happens because Eric strays. Eric starts a relationship with one of his students, bad boy. Let's talk about that, because that's the kind of thorn in the rose bush, isn't it? The situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think he shows a level of resistance to the commune project that is hard to respect, given that he caves anyway. I feel like when your wife says, let's do this, you either go along with it because you genuinely want to do it, and if you don't want to do it, then you fucking say that you don't want to do it, and it's a red line.
Dig your heel in. Yeah.
And he's kind of neither one nor the other, so he sort of he does this, and that's, I think he becomes fundamentally unsympathetic. I was talking to someone else about this the other day, like how some characters in films are like straight up nasty and you can get on board with it, and some characters are like good and like well intentioned. But yeah, a character like Eric really suffers from just being like insipid.
I think that's the thing. Eric starts off as this sympathetic character, and the tables turn.
Yeah.
In which Anna is a sympathetic character, because she says early on, she says very directly to Eric, she says, "I'm bored of this relationship." And she doesn't mean it in a fatal way. She kind of says it in a way of let's experiment with broadening it up and opening it up to other people, not in a kind of swingers like car keys in a bowl way, but just try a different way of living. And she says, I love you, but I get tired. I have the same conversation with you always. I want to experience something new. She wants a bit more excitement, whatever. And Eric, ploddingly goes along with it, isn't really invested in it. And he feels rejected by this commune, not because he is rejected, because they clearly support and adore him, but because he just can't get on with it. He's sitting on the sidelines, and he can't feel the jollity of it or whatever, and that sense of self-imposed alienation drives him into the arms of his 21-year-old student, 23-year-old student.
Yeah, I mean, she's just like so she just hands herself to him, and she's a pretty face, and it just it's so you really feel for Anna, I think, from that point on, because he's just so what's the word, callous in how he doesn't bother even really to kind of hide it, and then he tries to incorporate her in the project, sort of knowing that she's sort of committed herself. He uses her initial political commitment to the commune project against her, almost as a form of revenge. He's almost like, okay, so you want a commune, right? I'm just gonna
move in.
I'm just gonna move
student
in.
I'm banging.
Exactly. It's really despicable.
And she kind of feels it's despicable, because Anna feels like she has to go along with it. I also feel sorry for the girl herself, because she falls for this guy, not knowing that he comes with this baggage of this household who subject her to an interview, but then dismiss her entering the house initially. They actually reject her out of sympathy for Anna, I think. Because again, even though they live in this commune, they still hold they have lines in the sand that they draw, and there's lots of lines in the sand that people draw. They're craving for, I guess, boundaries and some sense of normality and possession. And it's actually Anna who then says, kind of vetoes them, and she basically says, no, I'm all right with it, let's do it. But she has this traumatic breakdown in the second half of the film, and that's where the film really comes alive actually and becomes a lot more interesting, partly because she acts this breakdown so, it's a perfect performance. Sometimes we don't talk enough about the acting actually when we're doing this. I know we laid into Showgirls, but actually the way the kind of sense of control and an emotional rawness that you see through her, kind of with this collapse, trying to absorb what the commune is, trying to not lose face, to not to own her feelings about Eric, because she still clearly is in love with Eric. I think it's very touching, and it's like really profound, especially when he's found out in his deceit by his daughter, because he brings the student over to shag her at the house when they're supposedly all at the lake house or something, and Freya's there and discovers them, and fair cop, he does then tell his wife, but he tells Anna, but it happens in a really kind of like he's informing her about like a new dishwasher. It's this kind of, oh, well, I've done this. Okay, lights out.
I think the whole commune, even though it's not explicitly a polyamorous project, the whole commune vibe kind of gets him off the hook.
Yeah. He's like he kind of rides the coattails of the idea that this is acceptable. Whereas if this had happened before then, you feel like this would have been a more emotionally confrontational thing in a more direct way, where she again feels like, I suppose she's buoyed along by it and reacts in a way that I suppose you would in a kind of polyamorous relationship situation, where she's acts cool with it initially and then unravels as she confronts the reality, the strength of her feelings, and how she feels betrayed, because she loses her job as a TV presenter.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the phrase that they use in economics, privatize the profits and socialize the losses, which is kind of what Eric does. All of the emotional labor involved with this affair, he gives to the commune, and they have to gives it to Anna and Freya. Everyone else has to deal with it, and then the profit of it, which is like he gets to live with this fit girl who's who's
basically a younger model of his wife, effectively. Yeah, she's very physically very, very similar. So the old kind of trope of trading someone in for a younger model is pretty much what he does. It's interesting, and it's like you say, he's not particularly sympathetic. He's simpy, not sympathetic. And he loses the respect of that. He at no point was a willing fellow traveller of this commune. He clearly doesn't agree with it and seems quite conservative, but then uses it. He weaponizes that against Anna, who then actually is exiled from the house effectively,
even though it was her idea.
Yeah,
I mean, it's quite. And what the question I want to ask here, the premise is a compelling and interesting premise. Like I commissioned this this episode because I liked the sound of the film, and I know that Vinterberg has made 2 masterpieces. I find these topics of like political and personal struggles and just the general themes that roll around Vinterberg's work to do with how relationships are strained by people lying about things, or people keeping things a secret, or boundaries being crossed. And yet this film, it has good music. The cinematography, I guess, feels a bit corny, but the colours all a bit too 70s-ish.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying about the Goodbye Lenin via energy to it. Yeah, that kind of
that's what
easy listening kind of film.
But really, the problem is deeper than that. The moral quandary doesn't seem to be refined. The characterization doesn't seem to be nuanced enough.
No,
there's something. Flat. There's a kind of void missing with Eric.
I think there's the suspension of disbelief, it requires too much strain, I think, here, because where you feel like there should be more made out of the transition into this commune, because it's a major disruption of his life and their life as they know it. And as an architect, like, we see him at work, he seems quite forceful and successful and quite in control. But it might be a reflection of again, it's the 70s of as it were, heterosexual nuclear families not being able to process emotion, but being able to process the realm of work and ownership, like house ownership and so on, but not being able to evaluate and kind of like own and explore their own emotions and the emotional interiority of their lives, and that doesn't happen. But I know what you're saying. It's like there is a void at this film. It feels flat in places where it should feel a bit more nuanced and coloured. I think partly because it skims through the kind of this bonding montage where they go and swim at the sea, and these kind of quick cuts to these dinner parties they have, and it skirts very very loosely around that, and it doesn't flesh out these characters around them, even though the whole point of the film, the premise, is that this is an exploration in communal living and the boundaries of possession and ownership and desire. So I didn't really buy it in that sense. I think when it clarified and when it focused with a laser on Anna's breakdown, that it became a really interesting and really good film.
Yeah, narratively, like everything that's proposed is a yes. So like everyone that we see auditioned for the commune is approved. As soon as the only student that we meet, well, we meet some boy that he's parring off, but then that just leads us into him meeting Emma, who he. Like everything happens for a reason, but I think when you're writing scripts, you have to.
There's so much causality and
obviously everything has to be significant. You can't just shuck in something that never comes up again. But it felt like with this, it was just so rushed at the start to sort of establish this quandary. It's
a very drab film in a lot of ways. We don't learn much about. I feel like we need to know more about Denmark at this time, because it almost feels a little bit too late. This is 1978, a year before the Baader-Meinhof gang had been shut down, right? Yellow Submarine sunk a long time ago. This is like it's shut down, and this is like the
never hijacked a flight.
This is it. This is like the end of the experimental 60s and 70s. That era has come to a close. This is kind of almost like this percolation of counterculture being adopted and taken up in bourgeois intellectual Denmark, and it's taken up in a very kind of quite liberal way, and it again, the issue is why these people, what's going on in Denmark at this time, that this these people believe that a commune is the kind of way forward, because it would be an unusual situation now. I think certainly an unusual situation in quite conservative Denmark. Having lived in Denmark, it's quite a conservative country. Like. That's the thing. It's a progressive country in terms of its social policies and so on, but it is a strong backbone of very Germanic conservatism running through Danish society. Things like ownership, possession, and there's a small C conservatism. It's quite strong.
That gives the context to this film more weight, I suppose.
Yeah, I think in the context of, like, if you were Danish watching this, I think it has more impact and power, and you can understand a bit more about why Anna suggests this lifestyle, rather than the more obvious thing, which would be, let's just rent out some of the rooms in the house.
Yeah, I mean, it seems extreme to me. I know it happens, but I mean, I don't think it happens very often that someone inherits a property worth. I mean, that property in 1 million kroner then, I mean, now it would be
mad kroner,
several £1 million, maybe £4 million. Someone to inherit a house like that on the outskirts of the capital city, and to just give it to the first 10 people you've found off a gum tree.
And they don't seem like naive people. They're both he's a successful architect, she's like a successful news journalist.
It's
they're not the obvious people to adopt this lifestyle, unless I'm missing something about like the late 70s in Denmark, where people like the bourgeoisie were kind of like were playing with like counterculture and interpreting it, you know, in a kind of lukewarm way. Because the thing is, there's no like people dressed quite conservatively. There's no kind of like it's wine and chat. There's no kind of like smoking like horrible grass, you know, and getting baked. And there's no like nothing to indicate these people are countercultural. Maybe Olle, because they make an allusion to, you know, he arrives with two carrier bags, right, as his possessions, one of which are his clothes and the other which someone says, oh, is that leftist literature? And he's like, haha, you know me so well.
There's all this very intellectual, ideological stuff about like how important it is to run things communally and do decisions a certain way.
Yeah.
And then there's like, how do these people feel?
And it's interesting because, you know, there is a rich seam of films which explore different facets and dimensions of the counterculture. And we rarely see that in Europe, actually. It's typically an American. You know, in the UK in the early 70s. Good
Goddard films. We were talking about it when we did Jester.
More so like the hippie counterculture, maybe, rather than the intellectual counterculture. And I think, you know, you've got like Beautiful Way to Live and pop group films in the UK, like England, but they're documentaries from the early 70s, right, about like the Norfolk, Cambridge and Norfolk-based hippie communities. And you get little insights onto this, but they're very much more like the classic hippie syndicalist kind of organizations, whereas this is it's like a weirdly bourgeois interpretation of counterculture, which is maybe that's kind of how the film functions, because people do bring with them all of these like normative social boundaries, right? And there's little allusions to it which are quite good. Like he's quite good on these little details. There's a moment where a bit later on in the film they're setting out the plates for dinner, and one of the characters swaps the wine glasses and says, oh no, this is my wine glass. You know, and it's like this moment where it's like everything's shared, you know, they eat from the same bowl kind of thing, but already the idea of possession and is kind of crystallizing around, you know, particular objects and that message of ownership. So I think I can see how that works, but those things weren't blown up enough, maybe.
Can I just highlight something else that's pretty hilarious? The woman who plays Emma, the student, is Thomas Vinterberg's wife in real life.
It all makes sense.
She's 33 now. She would have been in her late 20s.
Yeah, I thought she didn't look 23 or whatever.
Vinterberg is a little bit older, shall we say?
Is he divorced? I wonder. Wikipedia it.
I'm on Wikipedia now.
Because it feels Mario like a film.
Oh my god! Mario Valbom, married in 1990, divorced 2007. Helena Reingard Neumann, born 3 years before Thomas Vinterberg married his first wife.
Oh, it's all coming out in the wash. Because I feel like this film is like, it's almost like a contrite. Years after his divorce, he's like made effectively a kind of mirror film to his. I would love to be a fly on a wall in that relationship. By the way, you know, he's talking to his ex-wife and he's like, I'm making a film about a divorced man who sleeps with one of his younger students. Yeah, and it's also my new wife.
What are we gonna do about this, man?
About Thomas Vinterberg? What should we do about Kevin?
No, just about like dudes just doing that.
It's pretty.
We need to respect
transparent.
We need to respect
boundaries.
We need to celebrate older female bodies and not just fucking dump them in. I mean, we're decaying just as much as women are, let's face it.
Does this film feel like a way... We're faster, I would say. This film feels like a way of justifying, and we're really like projecting now. This film is a way of him justifying, intellectualizing his unfaithfulness. Well, not I'm saying unfaithfulness, but his getting rid of his old wife.
If it was a good film, I would contest that. But
you're not. Are you going to let it run?
I think you're probably right.
I think that's a weird part to this film. Another weird part. So the child with the heart disease he dies in this film.
Yeah.
And he dies of horniness. This is the only way I can describe it, I think, because he's in love with like Freya, so he keeps giving Freya the eyes, and kind of like he has this close connect. He's quite connected to her. Freya starts dating this slightly older boy, because this is the other thing. The film kind of implies in a heavy-handed way that this sort of bourgeois countercultural lifestyle is percolating down into other things. It kind of has ripples away from it, and we see it the way it becomes interpreted by Eric with his affair. How it becomes interpreted through Freya, who kind of feels more sexually confident. This is after she's 14, by the way. This is after she sees her dad, catches her dad in the act, as it were, almost. And then she kind of goes after this older boy who's implied is probably like 16 or 17 or something. And she has sex with him and then starts a relationship with him. And then there's a kid as well who's picked up all of this kind of misdirected kind of roguishness, I guess, from this lifestyle, this unfixedness, which is why he's obviously doesn't understand what he's saying, but kind of like is chirps in with everyone pretty much. But the thing is, when Freya brings the her new boyfriend over for this dinner, it starts off really well and everyone's having fun and sharing wine and there's a nice chicken meal and it's like great, and then the kid just like sees Freya.
I did not make that connection between the kid's death and just being cucked by
gets cucked. He get death by cucking, and he looks over at Freya and the boyfriend and they're like holding hands and like talking, and he just looks at them and then dies.
Fucking hell, man.
He's a king.
He's a king. R.I.P.
R.I.P. little man.
They
death by cucking. Yeah, then they just like, then it's literally the scene tone change completely, and then they're just like walking out of the hospital or the crematorium with this bag of ashes, jar of ashes, and just chuck him in the sea, and then it's kind of back to normal again.
You know what? This film feels like a BBC Two drama from the early 2010s that my mum would be like, oh, they said in The Guardian this was quite good, and then like at the end of episode 2 she'd be like, well, it's not very good, is it?
This is primetime BBC drama, not excluding some notable exceptions like I Will Destroy You, but it's got the same kind of vapidness to like Normal People. If you saw the Sally Rooney screenplay interpretation, it's kind of vapid greyness to it. I haven't even heard of it. I don't know who Sally Rooney is. But it's got the same. It's got huge BBC energy to it. Actually, I think you really hit the nail on the head. And it actually weirdly shares a lot of stylistically and energetically. It shares a lot with Black Book, which we talked about, Verhoeven, actually, as a kind of Northern European drama, and it's this particular tonality to this kind of film, which seems to be what people are making in polite society in Northern Europe at the moment.
I wanted so much more from it. I really wanted it to be good. That's the thing, because the subject matter is interesting, but it's just now I've found out the thing about his wife. I'm just like, this is just
sticky, isn't it?
Sort it out.
I'm going to finish watching Festen. That's going to be I'm going to do that after this, I think.
You're going to enjoy that.
Because I was really having a lot of fun in the first half. Again, like I said, picture kind of like heightened, intense drama of the energy of like, almost like thick of it. Like quickness, like it's rapid fire, shit going on, but then looks like a 90s music video in the best possible way.
Right.
What's up next?
We're not going to review Straubhuyer because...
No, we're not going to do that. I've got better things to do.
We're not masochists.
Yeah. As it looks like a Straubhuyer film that I might actually slightly like, but also absolutely not. So I just...
we keep it real. We keep it real on MoveTube.
We'll just choose something else.
We'll choose something else.
We did talk vaguely about Pedro Almodovar, but I just I don't know.
Yeah, again, Almodovar's best film, Talk to Her, is going to come up on Mubi in a few days. So that's possible. It's a possible.
Maybe it's in the mix, And there's always like, if there's films that people want us to look at, that are in the movie library, and you really desperately want us to review a particular film, we will do it.
Yeah, we do take requests.
We do take requests. No, we haven't had any. We're waiting.
We're waiting for your call.
Wait for your call. There's some good shit in there, you know. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which would be interesting to do, probably is on there if you want to see something that's relatively recent, or you want to go for something really obscure. Not too obscure though, please. Yeah. Not
too obscure. We keep a fine balance. I think we tend to review films that obscure films when we really like them or really.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a friend last night. I was having a beer with, and he was like, "Okay, I haven't actually listened to it yet." So he's like, I just like, well, listen to the episodes that you've seen the films of.
Yeah.
I think that's the draw. So, you know, start with what you know.
Come from Mulholland Drive, stay for the structure of Crystal.
Crystal, that's literally what I said. That was my recommendation. Anyway.
It's been a dream. All right.
Yeah, peace out, everyone.
Peace out, everyone. Take care. I liked it earlier, like later on when we were talking, when we were having a joke about his wife and the kid. That was good.
That was good. Maybe we can cut to that a bit quicker. I completely forgot about that kid until I started talking about it. So funny.
Horniness. That is funny. It's good to talk about childhood sexuality and stuff.
Yeah, because it kind of in the way that the kid doesn't know what he's saying.
Yeah,
he's just kind of living in that world a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. He kind of fucked the goose on this film a little bit. I feel like a more interesting film about Commune needs to be made.
Yeah, or just a more interesting, maybe just a film about polyamory. But I feel like every film about a monogamous person having an affair kind of does the same job.
It's about.
I find polyamory as an idea so unconvincing. I don't think I could.
I mean, The Bigamist kind of was the closest.
Yeah, but The Bigamist was all about shame, and it was all about keeping a secret and all of that.
The repressed, yeah.
God, we should record this bit we just said, and never mind.
I've stopped recording, but you've got it on Zoom. Maybe we could do a little post.